let me tell you what I used to think hope sounded like. I thought hope was kind of cheerleading. Like if we just said the right, bright thing, you've got this. Everything happens for a reason. Just stay positive. Then pain would shrink and life would behave. But over and over, in my work and in my own life, I've watched something else happen. Someone shares something real, grief, anxiety, disappointment, heartbreak, and the room gets quiet. Not because people don't care, but because we don't know how to be with pain. So we reach for optimism like a fire extinguisher. We try to put the feeling out. And what I've learned is this. There's a kind of positivity that doesn't heal, it silences. And there's a kind of hope that doesn't require pretending. It requires truth. That's what I want to unpack with you today. Toxic positivity versus real hope. Toxic positivity is not kindness. It's discomfort avoidance. And I want to say that slowly because on the surface, it's confusing. Most of us learned that being positive is the same as being supportive. We were taught that optimism is a virtue, that the strong person is the one who keeps smiling, who keeps pushing, who doesn't sit too long in the hard stuff. So when someone we love is hurting, our reflex is to reach for the bright phrase. Look on the bright side. Everything happens for a reason. At least you still have just be grateful. And I'm not saying we're bad for doing that. I'm saying we're human. We're trying to help with the only tools we think we have. But here's what I've seen again and again. That reflex is often less about caring for the other person and more about regulating our own discomfort. When pain shows up in the room, it makes most of us anxious. It activates that part of us that wants to fix, to solve, to make it go away. And sometimes we do that because we don't want to watch someone suffer. But sometimes, if we're really honest, we do it because their suffering touches our suffering. Their fear starts waking up our fear. Their grief reminds us of our grief. Their uncertainty pokes at the places in us that don't feel steady. So we throw a blanket of positivity over the moment, not because we're cruel, but because we're scared. The problem is that forced optimism can feel like abandonment. Imagine you finally work up the courage to say, I'm not okay, I'm overwhelmed, I feel like I'm failing. And the response you get is a shiny slogan. What you hear beneath that is, don't bring that here. Don't make me sit with that. I need you to be the version of you that's easier to hold. That's not kindness. That's a subtle kind of rejection. And it teaches people to edit themselves. This is how toxic positivity harms us. It makes normal human emotion feel like a problem to be solved instead of a truth to be honored. It names grief, anger, fear, disappointment as negative, and then pressures us to move away from them as fast as possible. But emotions don't work like that. When we don't let ourselves feel what's real, we don't become more resilient. We become more disconnected. The feelings don't vanish. They get stored. They leak out sideways into our bodies, our relationships, our work, our sense of self. We start snapping at people we love, numbing out, overworking, overscrolling, pretending we're fine while we're quietly falling apart. That's the cost of good vibes only. And I need to say this clearly. Choosing not to rush people past their pain is not the same as giving up hope. It's the opposite. Sitting with someone in the truth of their experience is one of the most hopeful things you can do. It says, you don't have to perform here. You're not alone in this. Your emotions are allowed. That kind of presence is brave. It requires us to tolerate discomfort, to resist the urge to fix, to trust that the human heart can metabolize grief when it's held with empathy. So when we talk about toxic positivity, we're not talking about joy or gratitude or encouragement being bad. We're talking about using positivity as armor, as a way to bypass reality. And if we want real healing, we have to stop confusing bypassing with caring. Because the truth is, the most compassionate thing we can offer isn't a bright line. It's a steady one. It's staying. It's listening. It's letting what's true be true. And that's where real hope starts. Forced optimism denies the reality that emotions are data. And I know that might sound a little clinical at first, but stay with me, because this is actually one of the most freeing things we can reclaim. Most of us grew up inside a kind of emotional ranking system. Some feelings were good, happiness, gratitude, excitement, calm, and some feelings were bad. Anger, sadness, fear, jealousy, shame. The good feelings were welcome at the table. The bad feelings got sent to their room. So when hard emotions show up, the reflex is to treat them like a glitch, like something is wrong with us, like we need to fix it fast. Why am I still sad? Why am I so anxious? Why can't I just move on? And then we layer positivity on top of that, hoping it will override what we're feeling. But emotions aren't glitches, they're signals, they're information. They are the way our mind and body say, pay attention, something matters here. If sadness walks into your life, it's usually not there to ruin your day. It's there because something was lost, something was precious, something needs to be grieved. If anger shows up, it might be pointing to a boundary that got crossed, to a value that was violated, to a truth that needs your voice. Fear is the nervous system's way of saying, this feels risky, this feels uncertain, I might need help or preparation. When we force optimism on top of those signals, we don't become more evolved, we become more disconnected. It's like driving a car and taping over the dashboard lights because you don't want to see them. Sure, the lights are gone, but the engine is still overheating. And this matters because unprocessed emotion doesn't disappear. It doesn't evaporate because we smiled harder or stayed busy longer. It gets stored in the body. It shows up as numbness, as exhaustion, as irritability, as shame that we can't explain. It shows up in relationships when we keep saying, I'm fine, but our tone says I'm not fine. It shows up at 3 a.m. when the house is quiet and suddenly everything we avoided comes rushing in. Forced optimism also teaches us to mistrust ourselves. Think about it. If every time you feel something hard, you tell yourself you shouldn't feel it, you start believing your inner world is unreliable, that your emotions are embarrassing or dramatic or weak, and then you stop listening. You stop asking, what is this feeling trying to tell me? You stop letting your experience guide you toward what you need. Real emotional strength is not the absence of hard feelings. It's the willingness to be honest about them, because honesty gives you choices. If I can name I'm anxious, I can ask, what do I need to feel safer? If I can name I'm sad, I can slow down and grieve instead of pretending I'm okay and then collapsing later. If I can name I'm angry, I can figure out what boundary I need to set, what conversation I need to have, what value I'm being called back to. That's empowerment, that's self-trust. So when we say emotions are data, we're not romanticizing pain, we're respecting it. We're saying my feelings are not the enemy, they're messengers. And when we stop shooting the messengers with forced positivity, we finally get to hear what our lives are actually asking of us. And that's where real hope gets its footing. Real hope starts with honest naming. This is hard. And I know that sounds almost too simple, but it's actually the hinge point between living a real life and performing one. Because for so many of us, the moment something gets painful, the pressure kicks in to be strong, to be fine, to be inspiring, to handle it well. We start negotiating with reality before we even acknowledge it. We skip right to I'm okay when we're not. We say it's all good when it isn't. We tell ourselves other people have it worse, like that somehow cancels what we're carrying. But hope doesn't grow in denial. Hope grows in truth. And truth starts with naming. This is hard. This hurts. I didn't want this. I'm scared. I'm tired. Those words don't make you weak. They make you accurate. They put your feet on the ground. They stop the spinning. They're the opposite of giving up. They're the beginning of showing up. What I've learned is that when we refuse to name what's hard, we end up living inside a fog. We're pushing forward, but we don't know what we're pushing through. And that fog is exhausting because your body and your heart are working overtime to keep reality out of your awareness. It takes a ton of energy to pretend you're fine. It takes a ton of energy to outrun grief or to hold your breath through fear. So the first act of real hope is almost like exhaling. It's letting yourself say, okay, here's where I am. And that moment of honesty is where everything shifts, because once you name what's hard, you can start asking better questions, not the fake hope questions like, how do I make this stop? Or How do I get back to normal fast? But the grounded ones. What do I need right now? What's the next right step? Who can I call? What boundary needs to be set? What do I have to grieve so I can move forward? Naming doesn't trap you in the hard thing. It tells you where the door is. I think people confuse honest naming with pessimism because they've been taught that pain is contagious. Like if we say out loud that something is hard, we'll make it harder. But the opposite is true. When we name it, we actually reduce the loneliness of it. We stop gaslighting ourselves. We stop making our emotions the problem. We stop turning normal human responses into personal failures. And here's the wild part. When you say this is hard, you're also quietly saying something hopeful underneath it. You're saying, I trust myself enough to tell the truth. You're saying, I'm still here. You're saying, I haven't checked out. Hope doesn't mean you believe everything will turn out perfectly. Hope means you believe you can stay present, stay connected, and keep walking even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. Grounded hope is not a shiny mood that floats above reality. It's a practice that lives inside reality. It's waking up and saying, I don't like this season. I don't understand it. I didn't ask for it. And I'm going to meet it with honesty instead of armor. It's the refusal to abandon yourself. It's the decision to stay in relationship with your own heart. So if you're in something hard right now, start there. Not with a slogan, not with a forced smile. Start with the truth. This is hard. And let that be the soil where real hope takes root. Empathy creates hope more than cheerleading ever can. And I know that might feel counterintuitive in a culture that treats encouragement like a performance sport. We've been trained to believe that the best way to help someone is to lift them out of the hard thing fast, to give a pep talk, to offer advice, to remind them of all the reasons they should be okay. We want to hand them a ladder while they're still falling. And again, that comes from love. It comes from not wanting people we care about to hurt. But here's what I've learned, and I learned it the hard way. When someone is in pain, what they need most is not a bright speech. They need to feel felt. They need to know their emotion makes sense, that they're not crazy, not too much, not alone. Empathy is the moment someone looks at your struggle and says, yeah, I get why that's hard. Not, here's the silver lining, but I'm here in the dark with you. Cheerleading often skips that step. It jumps straight to fixing. And when you fix too fast, you can accidentally send the message that the feeling itself is wrong. Like, we don't stay here. We don't talk about this. We don't feel this. That's why pep talks can land like pressure. Someone says, I'm breaking, and we respond with, you're strong, you'll handle it. And that might be true, but in that moment, it can feel like, don't break in front of me. Don't let me see what's real. Empathy is different because it doesn't rush. It doesn't require the person to be inspiring while they're suffering. It doesn't demand a timeline. Empathy just says, tell me more. It's presence without an agenda. It's staying in the conversation when it gets awkward. It's resisting the urge to say at least and choosing to say, I'm so sorry, that's really hard. And there's something almost magical that happens when people feel seen like that. The nervous system settles, the shame loosens its grip because shame thrives in secrecy and silence. But empathy brings the struggle into the light, and when a struggle is in the light, it becomes livable. It becomes bearable. It becomes something you can move through instead of something you have to hide from. This is why empathy creates real hope. Hope isn't born from denial. It's born from connection. We don't wake up hopeful because someone told us to be positive. We wake up hopeful because someone helped us carry what was heavy. Someone reminded us that our pain didn't make us unlovable. Someone proved that we could be honest and still belong. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of true empathy, you know what I mean. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. Sometimes it's literally a friend sitting beside you in silence, not trying to fix you, just refusing to leave you alone in it. Sometimes it's a simple, yeah, I've been there. I'm here. That kind of presence doesn't erase the pain, but it makes you strong enough to face it. So when someone you love is hurting, try this. Don't do the emotional cleanup crew thing. Don't rush them to a lesson or a bright side. Just meet them where they are. Offer the steady sentence. That makes sense. I'm with you. You don't have to do this alone, because that is hope in its most human form. Honest emotion is empowerment because it leads to action. And I want to linger here because this is where everything we've been talking about becomes practical, not just poetic. When we get honest about what we feel, we stop living in reaction mode and start living in alignment. But that only makes sense if we stop treating emotions like they're inconvenient visitors and start treating them like they're part of the navigation system. Here's what I mean. Fake positivity says, feel better. It's a command. It's vague. It doesn't tell you what to do except to stop being human in front of people. Honest emotion says, feel what you feel, and let's find out what it's asking for. There's a world of difference between those two. One shuts you down. The other opens a door. Think about how many of us were taught to override our internal signals. You're sad. Be grateful. You're angry. Calm down. You're scared. Don't be dramatic. Over time, we stop trusting ourselves. We start second-guessing our own experience. And when you don't trust your feelings, you don't trust your needs. When you don't trust your needs, you don't set boundaries. You don't ask for help. You don't change what's hurting you. You just keep enduring it while trying to smile through it. That's not strength. That's survival on mute. Honest emotion is empowering because it gives you specificity. It helps you name what's actually happening inside you, and naming is how you move. If I can say, I'm anxious, I can ask, what is the threat here? Is it real? Is it old? Is it something I need to prepare for or something I need to soothe? If I can say, I'm lonely, I can ask, who do I miss? What kind of connection do I need? What am I afraid to reach for? If I can say, I'm resentful, I can ask, what boundary did I ignore? What expectation did I not voice? What truth have I been swallowing? That is power, not because the feeling is fun, but because the feeling is useful. And there's another piece here that I think we don't say out loud enough. Emotions don't just lead to action, they lead to wise action. When you bypass them, your choices get messy. You either explode or implode. You overreact or you go numb. You make decisions from panic, from people-pleasing, from shame. But when you face what you feel, you can respond instead of react. You can choose instead of cope. I've seen people do this in the smallest, bravest ways. Someone finally admits, I'm burned out. And instead of pretending they're fine, they take a day off. They ask for support. They stop saying yes to everything. Someone admits, I'm grieving. And instead of rushing to fix it, they let themselves mourn. They talk to a friend. They slow down long enough to heal. Someone admits, I'm angry. And instead of calling themselves toxic, they realize they've been tolerating disrespect or overworking or shrinking their life to keep everyone else comfortable. So they set a boundary. They have the hard conversation. They change the pattern. That is what empowerment looks like. It's not a mood, it's movement. Now, I'm not saying honest emotion is easy. Sometimes it feels like opening a door you've had bolted shut for years. Sometimes you name what you feel and it gets louder before it gets softer. That's normal. That's the nervous system thawing. That's your heart catching up with reality. But the alternative, the fake positivity, the denial, the editing, keeps you stuck. It keeps you small, and it keeps you alone. Real hope depends on this. Not hope as a shiny slogan, but hope as a practice. Honest emotion gives hope its legs. Because when you can say, this is what's true, you can also say, and this is what I'm going to do next, even if the next step is tiny. Even if it's just telling the truth to yourself before you tell it to anyone else. So yes, feel the hard things, not because you want to live in pain, but because you want to live in reality. And from reality, you can act. From reality, you can heal. From reality, you can hope. So here's what I hope you take with you when you leave this conversation. Real hope is not a bruise-free life. It's not a smile that never drops. It's not the demand that you stay shiny and inspiring no matter what you're carrying. Real hope is braver than that. Real hope says, I will tell the truth about my life and I will not abandon myself in the telling. Toxic positivity asks you to shrink your humanity to make other people comfortable. It whispers, don't feel too much, don't need too much, don't be too messy. But you were never meant to live a curated life. You were meant to live a real one. A real life includes grief and joy, fear and courage, heartbreak and resilience. And when we stop ranking our emotions, when we stop calling some feelings good and others bad, we stop fighting ourselves. We start listening. We start healing. And the invitation here is simple, but it's not easy. Let feelings be data, not directives. Let them tell you what matters. Let sadness show you what you love. Let anger show you what you value. Let fear show you where you need support. And then choose your next step from that honest place. Not from performance, not from pressure, from truth. If you're walking through something hard right now, I want you to hear this clearly. You do not have to be positive to be hopeful. You don't have to rush past your pain to prove you're strong. You are allowed to say, this is hard, and still be a person of courage. You are allowed to need people. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to grieve. Staying honest is not falling apart. It's gathering yourself. And when someone you love is hurting, remember that you don't have to fix them to love them well. You don't need the perfect words. You don't need a bright ending. You just need to stay. Presence is the most powerful form of hope we offer each other. I'm with you. That makes sense. You're not alone. Those are not small things. Those are lifelines. So let's choose grounded hope, the kind that stands on reality, not denial, the kind that doesn't hush pain but holds it, the kind that makes space for all of you, because your wholeness is the goal, not your performance. Good luck, and more than that, good courage. Keep telling the truth, keep choosing connection, keep taking the next right step. You're not alone in this.